Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey folks, it's Jeff. Just wanted to let you know that we recorded this episode. Well, we started recording it before the Jayden de Laura COVID news dropped, and then partway through we learned about the Jayden de Laura COVID news. When we got to the part about previewing the offense, we really focused in on Cameron Cooper because we assumed he'd probably be the guy to take over. Since then, some other tweets have come out that have said that Gunnar Cruz took the first team snaps in practice, so we don't know who's going to start. But what we can tell you is this, that our line of thinking doesn't change very much depending on whether it's Cooper or Cruz. We see them as guys with similar skill sets, so with similar opportunities against a pretty bad defense. So as you're listening to it and as you listen to us talk about Cameron Cooper, you can just sub in Cruz and we feel like the analysis pretty much stays the same. So just keep that in mind as you listen. Thanks for listening, and go Cougs. Hey, Craig.
Hey, Jeff.
What's up?
I don't know. I'm ready to talk some football.
You are?
Just
that's
football.
Good. Ooh, just football.
Yeah.
No beer for all you people who are like, why do they always talk about beer? I don't even like beer. Like, no beer. I'm drinking beer.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I wasn't going to have one, but
we're not going to talk about it. I know. I was kind of feeling the same way.
But yeah, this is Podcast versus Everyone, Stanford preview edition. I'm Craig Powers. With me is Jeff Newser.
Yeah, that's me.
We're back again. Football time.
Heck yeah.
So 0-2 Stanford Cardinal, 1-1 WSU Cougars.
No, who would have seen that coming?
Well, I think
it's not totally implausible, but still, it's like, Stanford's 0-2.
I mean, I think before this season, I don't think anyone would have been that shocked by it. Both their games are on the road, and or I guess no, Colorado was at home. Never mind.
Colorado was at home, and Colorado was roundly expected to be the worst team in the conference. Right?
Yeah, which
that's what everybody's expecting anyway.
Yeah, Colorado's 2-0. They always seem to be a little bit better than everyone thinks they are. But yeah, they jumped out to a huge. Stanford got out to a huge deficit in the third quarter, and then stormed back to make that game look a lot closer by the end. But still, with they were relying on a stop with about 2 minutes left to try to come back and win and
try to have a chance.
Yeah, and didn't happen. So yeah, they're 0-2, 35-32. I know I gave up on that game when it was 28-9, midway through the third quarter. So I tell you, I did not see any of the comeback attempt or anything. Actually, so Stanford did get the ball back, it looks like, with some time left, not much, and then just fumbled the ball. But yeah, so I didn't see the end. I just ended up seeing the score pop up later. While I was watching, other games, and I was like, whoa, that got tight. So I guess we can kind of start off with talking about Stanford's offense, which has had two different quarterbacks through the first two games because Davis Mills, who threw for over 500 yards against the Cougs last year, had a false positive on a COVID test and was held out of the game against Oregon. And we talked last week quite a bit about Jack Shaw and his limitations. So that kind of held them back against Oregon. So did a bunch of missed field goals on their offense. And then we saw in this game, Davis Mills was in and they threw the ball a hell of a lot, probably trying to come back. Now, Jeff, do you think that that David Shaw is going full on like what we saw a couple of years ago when they were just hucking the ball around and giving up, when they played the Cougs, or is this just a a product of how that Colorado game went, where they were down 28-9 late midway in the second half.
Well, if there's one thing that I absolutely, to the core of my being, believe about David Shaw, is that David Shaw, to the core of his being, believes he's smarter than everybody else, which makes him really kind of the perfect fit for Stanford, right? Like he very much brings a pro football mentality to his coaching philosophy. It's not that every pro football coach is like this now. Obviously, NFL coaches have gotten a little more aggressive and a little more pass happy and kind of all those things. But he sort of at his core is the sort of the conservative guy, right? I mean, he was best known for doing the big heavy intellectual brutality crap. For a while, recruiting, like 7 5-star linemen and then bringing them all in the game at the same time, stuff like that, right? And having Christian McCaffrey and Bryce Love and, to kind of, using those guys to just run
tight
and
ends,
run.
Big athletic tight ends.
Big, huge, like 6'5" tight ends who ran like wide receivers, like all those guys are playing in the NFL now. Like, okay, so known for that. But, one thing about NFL coaches is that they feel supremely confident in their ability to scheme up some sort of advantage, right? And like we hear this from Pete Carroll all the time, like even as the defense, like tonight has played well, but in the past maybe got shredded, like a couple weeks ago against the Bills, right? Like they get shredded through the air. The Bills decide they're going to throw the ball 50 times, and Pete Carroll's like, man, I thought we had a really good game plan to stop their run. They really surprised us with all that passing. And it's like, every coach in the NFL thinks that they've got some sort of like tactical advantage that they can deploy. So that's all a really long-winded way to say David Shaw thinks like that. And so when it comes to what he's going to do on any given Saturday, it's really tough to know, right? Like he could run the ball 40 times one week, pass the ball 50 times the next, which is what he's done so far this year. They ran the ball. Now, some of that may have had to do with the quarterback situation in the opener against Oregon, right? Mills was out. You mentioned that. But, but they ran the ball a ton, had some pretty good success. And then Colorado, of course, they threw the ball a billion times. Now, you mentioned they, fell way behind. But, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine him just totally abandoning the run. So there had to be some part of him that was like, we can really dial up the passing game if we have to. So what we're going to see on Saturday, I have no idea. Cougars have a new defense, new defensive coordinator. David Shaw is going to, I don't know. I'll be happy if he throws the ball 50 times because I think that's the stronger part of our defense right now. But, who knows? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, it's interesting. They threw the ball 26 times in the first game between two different quarterbacks, and then they only threw the ball 19 times in the first half against Colorado, then hucked it 37 times in the second half. So
and had a lot of success too.
Well,
that's the other.
Yeah. I mean, overall, the numbers aren't great. Like he threw 56 passes to get 300. He was basically 5.8 yards per pass. Like, which is well below good. If you generally want like 7 yards a pass as the minimum, and then anything better than that, you're starting to get better and better. Like a more.
So there's a suggestion there that maybe Colorado was sort of content to let him dink and dunk down the field, right, with a big lead.
Yeah, but
it almost cost them. But
of course, last year. As I mentioned, Mills threw for 500 yards, 10 yards a pass against WSU. They had some turnover, issues and like that, and that kind of helped that game turn into a blowout for the Cougs. And the Cougs offense was just, clicking themselves. So it'll be interesting this time around. I definitely think Davis Mills is, I'd much rather have their other quarterbacks in there. He's a solid quarterback. He, as we talked about before, like he was obviously going to force Costello out of the starting job. That's why Costello was leaving. And he honestly looked better because Costello, when he was injured last year, Mills looked better in relief. So he's a pretty solid passer, big guy. So I think he can definitely challenge this. I would say he's better than Tristan Gebbia.
Yeah,
and
I think that's pretty safe.
I don't know if he's better than Tyler Shuck, just because Shuck's running ability is tough to defend. But he's definitely going to put more pressure on WSU's defense than Trishan Gebbia, and I think overall the Stanford offense is going to be a bigger challenge than that Oregon State offense was, at least maybe in their first game. Who knows? They could come out and be something better later, but. So if you look at the numbers, they're 52nd in SP plus, which isn't great, but when you look at WSU's defense is 101st. Obviously there's a lot of preseason stuff put in there, but the reason they put that preseason stuff in there is because a lot of times it's fairly predictive. Yep. So WSU's defense isn't good. We saw that firsthand. We talked about that. I won't dwell on that too much, but the last half of last game really showed, and then the last half of the Oregon State game kind of showed their weaknesses, which is many. So obviously one guy that worries me greatly on the Stanford offense is Semi Fehoko.
Yep.
Definitely a guy that can get behind the defense. Or a guy that can catch a short pass and make a man miss and run away from you.
And he's a big dude. That's the other part. Like, he's strong. He doesn't necessarily need to get around somebody to make a miss. He's fast and strong and tall, kind of the, prototypical Stanford receiver that we've gotten used to. So definitely going to be a challenge, no doubt.
Yeah, so he's got 8 catches for 162 yards already this year, so 20 yards a catch with some, DK Metcalf type numbers there. They got another guy, Michael Wilson. He's got 10 catches, 130 yards. You'll see him get the ball. It's the funny thing is, we talked about last week that they might not necessarily have their big tight ends anymore, but they do have huge tight ends. They just haven't used them that much. And I'll be curious to see if they might deploy them a little more this week, because they got a couple guys that are like in the 6'3", 6'5", 230 to 250 range that line up at tight end, and they've only caught a couple passes, about 5 passes between the two of them so far this year. But it'll be interesting to see if either of them, and they both have good names. There's the Elijah Higgins and Scooter Harrington. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some special packages for them just to try to...
Wait, Scooter Harrington?
Yeah.
Like, that name is like, I don't know, like, I'm trying to figure out what that, like, is that the most Stanford name ever?
Yeah, he's probably like a physics major too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, he's just a big dude, like 6'5", 250, and I
wonder if his real name. So, like, I wonder if he's like a legacy guy who's actually like, Reginald, Samuel Harrington the Fourth, but we call him Scooter.
Yeah,
and he's some sort of like, I don't know, whatever. It's just like that name cracked me up. Okay.
So this is really his first year of like seeing big action, and he caught his first touchdown against Colorado. So maybe he's getting more and more use. I'm trying to scroll through. His full name is Scott James Harrington, and his dad is Scott. So there you go, nailed it.
I got it. Did his dad also go to Stanford, or did he go to Yale or Harvard?
It doesn't say.
Yeah.
They probably would say if he did go to Stanford, but what I said is he physics major. He's actually getting his master's in sustainability science, and then he got his bachelor's in management science and engineering.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's, okay. Sustainability, like, that's okay. I'm okay with that guy then.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, that's what football players at Stanford.
Right. That's, right? Yeah. Right. That's, yeah. Yeah. That ain't happening at others. No general studies majors down there at Stanford.
Remember Scooter. And I got to go back to Elijah Higgins for a second, because that dude he's panning for gold. Like, he's one of the, he must be like a descendant of one of the 49ers. Like Elijah Higgins.
That's right.
I don't know.
They sound like a law firm, man.
Just the combo of those two players. It's like, of course, they're giant
Higgins
tight
and
ends.
Harrington, attorneys at law.
Yeah, Higgins and Harrington, attorneys at law. Yeah, so
we fight
Higgins,
for your rights. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Go.
Higgins another big body, 6'3", 230. I think he'll probably. He's actually listed as a wide receiver, but I'm pretty sure they play him more like a tight end.
Yeah.
But he's a much more talented guy. He was a 4-star recruit. He's just a sophomore. So it'll be interesting to see if he can cause trouble for us. I think Stanford has some weapons in the passing game if they want to use them. Like, they have some talent. It's just a matter of if they will use it or not. But if they don't, so far, the guy they have taken the bulk of the carries hasn't been super impressive. It's Austin Jones. He's 29 carries, 109 yards. That's not exactly great. 3.76 yards a carry. And then you have Nathaniel Pete. Where are these freaking names, man? I'm sorry, like Nathaniel
Pete.
Nathaniel Pete, 11 carries, 114 yards. So he's obviously a change of pace back. But Austin Jones, less than 4 yards a carry. So it's been tough sledding for him.
He had a big game against Oregon. He was good against Oregon. 20 carries, 100 yards against Oregon.
So really rough game against Stanford.
Yeah, obviously couldn't get anything going at all against Colorado. So,
9 carries.
Yeah, so that would be the guy that obviously that I personally would be worried about. So
yeah, that's the guy you expect, unless Let me. I haven't finished my research on my thing, so sometimes when I see a guy have like far fewer carries in a game. I look up like their name plus injury, but nothing's coming up for that. So
yeah,
you never know with college teams. I don't really say.
That is also true.
Yeah. There's let's just We'll get. I guess we can get to it in the offense, but. No, let's just do this live. I just saw pop up on our Slack that Theo Lawson has reported that Jaden Delora has tested positive for COVID and will not play in the game.
God damn it! Yeah, there were rumors
he'll
about
also
that.
miss the Apple Cup if he's placed in the 14-day quarantine. But you definitely would if you tested positive, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, unless. So you're gonna So
let's back up. Let's back up before we get into this.
Yeah. All right. That's called a teaser, folks.
When we talked about Trevor Lawrence, before we get into, what's this mean for the team?
Yep.
Let's hope that Jaden Delora is okay.
Yeah. Let's start with that.
Yeah, let's start with that. So, obviously this is something that's impacted people negatively quite a bit.
Yep.
We've talked about how. Younger people have had better outcomes, and we've seen athletes have it and have, better outcomes. So hopefully Jaden, being an 18-year-old, very fit individual, doesn't have any, at high-risk side effects or anything.
Yep.
So hopefully he's okay. But yeah, obviously that changes things quite a bit for the Cougs going forward.
Yeah. His health is all that actually matters, but still a bummer from a football perspective. Oh, all right. Well, then should we flip it over and talk about the offense?
Okay, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up the defense here real quick. All right.
Sorry.
The Cougar defense is not very good. I think Stanford's going to run the ball.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Stanford's going to run the ball fairly, definitely more unless, of course, WSU gets out to a big lead, which would be fantastic.
Yes.
But I think Stanford's going to pound the rock, more like they did against Oregon, just because you can do that against WSU, I think. And so we'll see. So WSU probably going to have to stop the run early. But maybe David Shaw's like, hey, I'm just going to throw the ball around, and that's how I'm going to beat the Cougs finally. Let's remind everyone that the Cougs are four on a 4-game winning streak here.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like when we had our most success against their big offensive line when we had, smaller, quicker guys on the defensive line who could penetrate and disrupt, right? So like we all kind of remember that. We just don't we don't have that anymore. I mean, we do have smaller guys.
Yeah, we had our most success when we had any guys who could penetrate and disrupt.
Right. And we don't really seem to have that right now, so I don't know. I'd be I'm not real optimistic. The only thing I'm actually optimistic about is I think the over-under is like 66 or something, and I'm like over. Like it's this is gonna be a shootout, I think, with both teams in the 30s. So our defense, I feel reasonably confident that our pass defense can hold up okay, but I'm far less confident about getting mauled by Stanford's offensive line. So, and we saw it last week. Oregon's more talented than Stanford is, so there's no doubt about that. So I'm not, we looked okay for a half, so maybe, we can find something there or figure something out. But, I wouldn't be shocked if, again, we ended up in sort of a first half, second half situation again where, Stanford's, offense isn't as talented as Oregon's. And so maybe we can, sort of game plan some things out to hold them in check in the first half, and then the second half is a free for all as the defensive line wears down. Of course, no Will Rogers, right? We've lost him. He's transferring, so that's another guy off the defensive line rotation. And then, of course, you never actually know who's going to play on Saturday until the game starts, and it's like, is that guy playing? Because I would assume that Jaden Delora maybe he's the only guy with COVID, but I would think it's probably a pretty safe assumption that he's not. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. We'll see. I guess we can flip it over to the offense. Should we take a break and then
Sure.
flip it over to the offense?
Yeah, we can do that. All right, we're back.
We're back, and we will talk about the Jaden Delora-less offense here. So it's kind of harder to make a read on how I'm glad I didn't finish writing and publishing this preview already like I was hoping.
Yeah, you'd be like diving back in there being like, wait a second, I got to revise this.
So I honestly don't know who's going to start. I guess Cameron Cooper, but
that would be my assumption. I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, and he's definitely not going to have the RPO capability that they've been running heavily with Jaden Delora.
Yeah.
So I mean, it'd be interesting. Maybe they can still run it with him, and he's not slow.
Yeah, I think they can still do it.
But he's not he's not the speedy guy like the natural sort of runner like that Delora is.
Right.
Jaden has ran out of quite a few sacks this year. One thing I've been bullish on is the lack of QB sacks that are like killing drives this year.
Yep.
And I don't know if Cooper has that escapability. Maybe he can do even better. Maybe he can step up in the pocket a little more, or do something different with the ball. Who knows? We haven't seen him run this offense at all, other than just some not less than impressive stats from scrimmages. It's just interesting now. It's incredibly hard to preview a game when you think you have some idea of what the Cougs are doing on offense.
Yeah.
After 2 games. You have some idea of what this quarterback can do, but unfortunately he comes down with the COVID, and now we're left to just guess. And yeah, I'd lean towards your guess is Cameron Cooper.
Yeah.
We'll obviously Theo didn't report anything about canceling the game yet, so hopefully people were properly distanced from Jaden Delora and it doesn't impact anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here are the things we know about Cameron Cooper. Number one, we know he's got plenty of arm talent. Like we know he can throw the ball. And we know that he is primarily a pocket passer, but he's also not, he's not necessarily a statue either. But I wouldn't say he's a runner, right? Like it's sort of like the difference. I think he's probably a little bit of a step up athletically, like a slight step up athletically from Anthony Gordon, but definitely not the runner that Jaden DeLora is.
Right.
And one thing that's encouraging, though, so I think there's a couple things. One is I think what we've seen from Rolovich is a willingness to deviate from any sort of preconceived notions of what the offense has to be and tailoring something to fit the strength of the guy who's back there. One of the things, Jesse did a really, neat breakdown on the RPOs, and, and our RPOs are not run and shoot plays. These are not part of the run and shoot offense. These are things that Rolovich is incorporating because, assuming he's doing it because it plays to DeLora's strengths and things that he can do well. So, with Cooper, maybe we don't see as many of those, but maybe we see some other things that fit into his skill set. Maybe there's a little bit more incorporation of a quick passing game. I found it kind of funny. The Oregon State beat writer was like, talking about how Oregon State didn't get a lot of sacks and was saying, well, Washington State has this quick passing game. And I'm like, no, they don't. It out, man. No, they don't.
Very vertical.
Yeah, DeLora stands back there and stands back there and stands back there. That's how this goes, because that's the run and shoot. That's why the running back's not out in the flat, because he's staying in to make sure the quarterback's got time to throw. So, and throw it deep. So I think, it wouldn't shock me if maybe they try to bring maybe a little bit more of that quick passing stuff, just kind of in, if that's, something that, Cooper's been doing for 2 years, basically heading up to this season. So there's that. And then the other part is that, Cooper, I feel pretty confident that Cooper's probably a more polished passer than DeLora is. So I think that there's definitely some opportunity there to throw the ball against what is a bad defense. It is not a good defense. Yeah. It's a bad defense. And that's really,
especially against the pass. Yeah.
And Stanford's fortunes the last few years, as they've sort of taken a dive, has really been tied to the drop off in their defense. It's bad. And it's about Oregon State quality. If you're like, how bad is it? It's about that bad. So there should be opportunities there for the Cougars to move the ball, and hopefully, Cooper's got a little bit of a rapport with the receivers, having been around the program for a couple of years. So, look, I'm not going to pretend that Cooper is, going to be better, because obviously DeLora was starting for a reason. So, but I think there's an opportunity here for Cooper. He's a talented kid, former 4-star recruit. There's every reason to think that he can still be successful this weekend. It's not like he's doing a Peyton Bender in the Apple Cup for his first start, where it's like, good luck, kid. So I think there's a chance here for him to show well, even as he's put in a little bit of a tough spot.
Yeah, and we saw DeLora showed well in his very first start. So it's just because it's a guy's first start doesn't mean he can't play well, especially when they get a softer landing. And to put some numbers on it, Stanford's given up almost 10 yards a pass. They are giving up 5.25 yards a carry, and that's with sacks. And they've only they have one sack in the first two games. A big by Thomas Schaefer, the giant Austrian 6'7", 300-pound Austrian defensive end. But yeah, so they have one sack. So they haven't been getting a ton of pressure. That's one sack on. Truly, they've been run, like teams have ran the ball against them. They've faced 84 rushes and 51 dropbacks. So, it's even though WSU throws the ball, runs the ball more, especially with Cooper in there, I would think WSU's offense is going to lean much more towards the pass. Given that it's always one back set, so you're not going to run with that one back 25, 30 times. That's not going to. It's not going to happen. That poor running back would just be getting destroyed.
Would be dead.
Yeah, so yeah, like McIntosh being a guy that they obviously don't feel so good about Basil yet or anything. So, because he's had one carry for a fumble, and
yeah, that didn't go great.
It wasn't like he probably was getting tackled for a loss on that play.
Poor
anyway,
kid.
But,
Yeah.
Because the center got blown up, but yeah, so they not a good. Obviously, they played a good offense in the first game, and I don't know how good Colorado's offense is. They might have just played a couple bad defenses so far, really. But this is not a great, like when you're giving up almost like 6.87 yards of play, and teams have run the ball so much more than passed it like that. Like that's not a good sign for you. No. Like usually, if teams are running the ball, and you're just gonna have lower yards per play just by de facto, but when they throw in the ball, still having great success, almost 10 yards a pass. Given WSU's vertical passing game and the way they use play action quite often, I feel good about that.
Yep.
Like be able to see Renard Bell and Travell Harris and Jameer Calvin get loose deep. Maybe get some big plays and get some quick scoring drives here. And if that happens, you can bet that Stanford will put the ball on the ground to kind of grind some clock out. But so it's pretty interesting. I'm sure Cooper can make those throws. So if the guy's open, maybe I don't know, maybe he doesn't have the deep ball that Delora does, but I think overall you would think he has a better kind of arm, but one thing we have been worried about in the scrimmages that he's played in the spring game and stuff is the turnovers. So that's something that Jaden has not really done. He has one interception and was kind of an arm punt, but other than that, he's done well taking care of the ball. Yeah. So you got to hope that can continue because we've shown if you can just make the plays that are there with this offense, like you can move the ball.
Yep. One thing I've noticed, so I'm kind of digging into Stanford's situational stats here. They've allowed only 32 completions, right? So you mentioned that teams have been running the ball more and then just like passing, like and getting these huge plays. 12 of the 32 completions have gone for 15 plus yards,
Yeesh.
And 6 of the 32 have gone for 25 plus yards.
I like the sound of that, man.
Yeah, so you've got about 20% of their plays, 20% of their pass completions going for 25 plus yards. That's quite bad. So we got that going for us. They've been terrible. Ugh.
And we know a bad defense when we see one.
Yes, we do. So maybe all that's needed here is for a team that likes to throw, because the first two teams they played, Oregon and Colorado, I feel like we know Oregon pretty well at this point under Mario Cristobal, and they are a physical team. Like that's their goal, is to be physical. They're going to run the ball. They're going to slam you. They're just going to hit you like a sledgehammer for a while. But also, kind of use some spread concepts to get the ball into open spaces from time to time throwing it. Colorado, I'm not as familiar with, but I do know this. I do know Carl Durrell from when he was at UCLA, and I do know that he spent, the last 10 years or whatever in the NFL. And so he's obviously going to lean conservative as well.
Jarek Broussard from the Buffs already has 58 carries in 2 games this year.
Yep. So these are two offenses that are going to lean run, whether the defenses wants it to or not. Like they're just going to run the ball as a matter of purpose, as a matter of philosophy. So I am curious how Stanford's defense is going to perform against a pass first team that is not going to run the ball just as a matter of philosophical establishment, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe. So are we able to take advantage? I mean, I don't expect we're going to get 10 yards per play. That would be a lot. But if we're throwing the ball 45 times, or 40 times, are we still going to get 8.5? yards per attempt or 9
yeah.
yards per attempt. Something
that
like
would
that.
be great if they did.
Right, like that would be super excellent still. Are they going to be able to get something like 8 or better even if they're throwing the ball 45 times? Or is it a matter of, play action pass, leading to some explosives? So I don't know. Curious, interested to see. But I think there's a real opportunity there for the Cougs to pile up a lot of points.
Yeah. So Cam and Cooper, lights are on, big show.
Yeah.
You're up, man, in this weird, world we're living in. This is just something that happens. Players are out for COVID, and we hope that Jaden's okay. Okay, let's get into predictions, which I feel, a little more wary, but hey, we never know what we're talking about anyway. So, Jeff, as always, you do the honors and go first.
Yeah, I think it's going to be high scoring. I think both teams are going to end up in the 30s. I think that WSU, we've sort of talked about this before. Like sometimes I think that a team just sort of has another team's number, and it is what it is until it's not. And since it hasn't been yet, I'm gonna keep going with the Cougs. So I'm gonna say WSU 38, Stanford 35.
All right. Be some big numbers for Camden's first game.
Yeah,
there.
I think so. Okay, and let's even go one more. Let's go like peg the passing yards. I'm gonna go 375.
Ooh,
375, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions.
All right, so he's gonna throw some picks. I guess we can burn that bridge if he gets there. If he has a big game, like them, if Cameron comes and has a couple big games, then where are you at? You're
looking at a quarterback battle heading into next season, I think.
Sounds pretty good. That's what Mike Leach always loves,
yeah,
right?
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. So I do think Stanford will try to kind of assert themselves physically, which might shorten the game a tad. WSU does tend to have longer possessions in terms of minutes, even when they're kind of like 5 or 6 play possessions, though I've noticed they just take a lot more time off the clock lately because, more of those plays are runs. So I'm going to go a little bit lower just based on possessions, and I'll say Cougs 34, Stanford 31. And then I'll say... I'll go let's go 320 and 3 touchdowns with 1 pick for Cooper. And I think that, I think McIntosh will have a nice game, maybe get about, hit 100 again. And so they'll be up there with some nice offensive numbers.
Yeah. I like that. That sounds good.
I think a win sounds good. Just get a win, and of course, get well, Jaden Delora. Hopefully, you're one of those very minimal symptoms and recover nicely. And I hopefully no one else is impacted as well.
I know, man, terrible. Ugh. All right,
man.
Okay. Feel good.
We did it under 40 minutes. Good job, team. So
High
go ahead
us.
and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, leave a nice comment, follow us on Twitter at Pod versus Everyone for Jeff, and at the Craig Powers for me.
Yeah.
If you have any comments, questions, podcast vseveryone@gmail.com. And that's all.
There it is. All right. Go Cougs, Craig.
Go Cougs.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.